Hi, everybody!
The most recent PlayStation State of Play had banger after banger. It's almost like WWE wrestler Sheamus was booking the show. However, there was one banger I didn't have on my bingo card, and that was Project Defiant, which is a first for Sony, as they have never released a first-party fight stick. I already have a fight stick, the amazing Hori Fighting Stick Alpha. However, I'm very interested in Project Defiant, and I really hope Sony will send me a unit to review, as I would love to own this. So, what makes this stick so unique? While not much is currently known about Project Defiant, a PlayStation blog post mentioned a few things that have me intrigued. Those being a completely digital stick, along with the ability to change the restrictor gate without needing a tool. Most modern fight sticks still adhere to you pretty much needing to disassemble it every time you want to make a minute change. So why is this stick being digital such a big deal? Mainly it's thanks to the fact digital sticks are apparently far more accurate than conventional ones. I have no experience with this, so I can't comment. But I would like to get one in my hands to compare it against a conventional one. But the main draw for me is being able to change the gates, since arcade sticks are very much down to a preference thing. So one player might not like the traditional square gates and may prefer a circular or octagonal one. Project Defiant's buttons are also going to be mechanical switches, which is an interesting addition, since this is usually reserved for more premium offerings like the Razer Panthera or other obscenely priced sticks. It'll certainly be different from the Hori Hayabusa buttons my current stick features, so again, would be interesting to compare the two. Beyond that, it'll feature a wireless or wired connection as an option. That's by no means a new feature in the world of fight sticks, but it's something I've been interested in, since that would be far more comfortable than the admittedly long cable on my current stick. But this isn't all I want to discuss regarding this stick. I want to discuss the negatives along with a theory I have. While Sony were very upfront about being able to change the restrictor gate on this particular stick without a tool, they didn't cover if the buttons could be swapped out if we end up not liking the mechanical switches. While I personally love a mechanical keyboard, I hate the micro switches in my Hori Fighting Commander Octa. Sure, they give me a more tactile experience, and they do confirm to me I've pressed a button, but I find during longer sessions, membrane buttons are far more comfortable. The ones on the Hori are just a little bit too stiff for my liking, though they may with time become smoother and less stiff. So that is indeed one concern I have, since part of the joy of owning a stick is being able to customize it to your preferences, which is something that might be a very limiting factor with Project Defiant. Since the stick itself is digital, that means switching over to a system with a spring is likely going to be impossible. So Sony had best allow the user the option of controlling the amount of resistance one gets from the stick itself. Again, in a traditional setup, you're able to set the spring to however stiff you like. Or in the case of a Korean-style lever, you can change the rubber grommet to a stiffer or lighter option. For example, with my Hori Alpha, I find the default spring way too light. I am increasingly finding myself disliking a ball top as my natural grip is more in line with a bat top. But considering I grew up in Canada, which used American Hap-style bat tops with Hap buttons, I have a distinct preference for that. Someone newer to fighting games who has yet to learn their preferences may feel differently. But it seems like Sony really doesn't want the end user to customize the Defiant too much, as it doesn't look like you can change the artwork at all or easily on this fight stick, which, again, is a big part of player expression when it comes to these products. Here's hoping Sony will allow users to customize the end product to their liking. So remember a bit ago when I mentioned my having a theory? We're getting to that now. We know Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls is a joint venture between PlayStation Studios, Marvel, and Arc System Works. We also know Sony is the biggest investor into EVO, which is the biggest fighting game event every year. So this makes me think Sony is more seriously looking at making fighting games a large part of their business model going forward, along with other arcade games, since these sticks are intended not just for fighting games, but also for beat-em-ups and shmups. Clearly, this new Marvel fighting game is just to test the waters, and judging from online reactions, people are really excited for it. Probably because Marvel vs. Capcom fans have been more touch-starved than a nerd on prom night. But one fighting game doesn't mean much unless it's backed up by a couple of others. So it makes me wonder if Sony might be taking another stab at PlayStation All-Stars to have their platform fighting needs covered. This would just leave a traditional 1v1 fighting game in the 2D space and another in the 3D one. This does, however, become a bit of an issue when you consider Sony doesn't exactly have an in-house development team when it comes to fighting games, hence why they subcontracted Arc System Works for this project. This makes me think PlayStation might have contracted a few other studios to work on stuff. This isn't me reporting on this, more I'm spitballing an idea that I think makes logical sense. It'd make a lot of sense as to why Sony have decided to make a first-party fight stick, because otherwise, why bother? It's not like fighting games are as big as they were in the 90s and 2000s. If they'd done a first-party stick for the PS1 or 2, yeah, that'd make a lot more sense. But the PS5? Something isn't adding up to me with this one. It'd also be akin to what Microsoft did back in 2013 with Killer Instinct. They subcontracted a studio to make a game based on an IP they own. Sony don't own the rights to Marvel characters exactly, but they do have a slew of exclusive Marvel games already, so this is just a continuation of that partnership. But that's part of why I think Defiant is going to be such a game changer for the PlayStation brand, unlike the Portal, which, yeah, was a very niche product nobody was asking for, and it was priced like a successor to the PSP or the Vita, which, by the way, looks like we'll be seeing a proper successor to when the PlayStation 6 comes out. Which, color me excited, if it actually gets treated like its own device and not just a companion that can stream PS6 games while playing your digital PS4 and 5 stuff. So before we wrap things up, if you've made it this far into the video, consider hitting the subscribe button as it'd really help me out. I'm currently trying to hit 2,000 subs by my birthday late next month. But there's one other thing I happen to like about this new product. It looks thin as hell, which is a great thing, especially when you consider most sticks are thick boys. Couple that with the buttons seemingly being spaced closer together than the traditional Vuelix system, and I think it's going to be a super comfortable stick for someone like me, who doesn't have the biggest hands in the world, but does have absurdly long fingers. That is actually one of my biggest issues with my Hori Fight Stick Alpha, it's the spacing. The stick is big, and the layout is better suited to my one friend, who's also into fighting games, who happens to be a bigger guy. His Hori Dead or Alive stick is much more in scale to what I'm looking for. Seriously, why do these fight stick manufacturers seem like they're compensating for something? Anyways, those were my thoughts on the Defiant. Now that I've said that word so many times, I want to go watch Star Trek Deep Space Nine for a while. But what are your thoughts on Project Defiant, and will you buy it when Sony releases it? Let me know in the comments. Now go check out my breakdown of the full state of play, and until next time, keep blazing that trail.